Back here on Yaffee Live, glad you're joining the show today. Joining me right now is Olivia Lupia. She is a reporter for the Tennessee Conservative. You can always read the latest news there at TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Olivia, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Doing good. So, got a lot of great stuff on the website today. Definitely wanted to talk about this story, though. There's a proposed Tennessee constitutional amendment that would solidify the right to bear arms. Talk about this a little bit.
Yes. So this is, it's called a House Joint Resolution, which actually means that it's an indication that there's an intent to amend the Constitution. And this is super important because snuck in our current Constitution, there is a language that says the legislature actually has the power to regulate the wearing of firearms with a view to prevent crime. So that doesn't sound very Second Amendment-y to me. So we've got this great resolution that would strike that portion and simply leave it as the citizens of the state have a right to keep and bear arms, which is a big deal.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. And I think most people in the state of Tennessee probably agree with it. But who is sponsoring this resolution?
So this is sponsored by Representative Jay Reedy. And he's been pretty solid on a lot of bills he's been carrying. I can't say that everything is perfect. We can't say every legislator votes perfectly all the time. But Reedy's carried some pretty solid stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how the voting lines walk out, given the personal differences between a lot of our legislatures at the Capitol.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've had the issue of gun control debated at the Capitol. We've had some Democrats try to make a name for themselves in that way. But for the most part, you have a Republican-dominated legislature. They want to keep the Second Amendment the way it is. Now, I understand as well, it says a resolution is the first requirement to amend the state constitution, and it must be passed by a simple majority in both chambers of the General Assembly this session, before again passing through the legislature by a 2/3 majority in both the House and Senate the following year. So there's that part. That's already going to be kind of a tough thing to accomplish, I think. But it also says, should the proposal pass both the legislative sessions, it will move to the ballot via referendum, though it may only be considered during a gubernatorial election year. Then to become official, the amendment must be passed by a majority of voters who voted in the governor's race. So it looks like, it's still got our work cut out for us if we want this to pass.
Yes, absolutely. So, like you said, even just getting it passed through 2 consecutive legislative sessions can be rather difficult, which is also going to be important come primary election time. For those of us who are up for election this year, is making sure we're getting people in who are going to be supportive of these kinds of things. And I think it's really interesting because you definitely don't want your state constitution to be super easily changeable. Otherwise it kind of takes away from the weight of it and the importance. And if we could amend it all the time, well, our rights would be shifting a lot more than I think anyone would realize or be comfortable with. However, this is a lot of work. And the fact that it can only be carried in a gubernatorial year puts a lot of pressure to get it passed this year, next year, and immediately refer it to the ballot, because if it doesn't make the 2026 ballot, there's no way we could even see it again until 2030. So there's a lot of moving pieces to this.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you in terms of constitutional amendments in a state constitution because, I've lived in other states where it was a lot easier to pass these amendments, and you just get amendment after amendment after amendment on each ballot, and it's just too much. It's not really the purpose of an amendment. So I tend to agree that I like that there's high bars, but hopefully we can get this one done. I'm speaking with Olivia Lupia. She's a reporter for the Tennessee Conservative, which you can read at TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Another interesting story here. Looks like one Tennessee congressman has been selected for the DOGE committee. Talk about that.
Yes. So this was one of my favorite things of all the good things that are happening in America this week. This one brought a big smile to my face. Tennessee's own Tim Burchett, who represents District 2, which is Eastern Tennessee, was selected by Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia to sit on the DOGE, which is the Department of Government Efficiency House Oversight Committee. So she was selected as the chair lady for that committee. She put a team together and they hit the ground running. And Burchett, who's kind of famous for his video updates, came out of the meeting, said, we're ready to go. They're going to look at everything they possibly can and go after it. I think he even said, you name it, we're going to go after it. But there's no sacred cows in the bunch. So that's really exciting to see.
I feel like Tim Burchett is like the perfect guy, too. That is a guy who is a no-nonsense kind of guy. He is constantly looking at inefficiency and waste in our government, and he's like, no. And he doesn't care if it's popular with Republicans or Democrats, whatever. He'll call it out. He'll go on social media, and he'll call it out. So I think that's a good thing. Do you think this DOGE committee as a whole will be successful?
I think so, because we're already seeing them do what they're supposed to be doing federally. So we had the executive order signed on Monday, and they shuttered one department. They're already cracking down on the closure of the DEI, which isn't DOGE exactly, but it's
kind of related. DOGE-ish.
Yeah, kind of related. Yeah, DOGE adjacent, we'll call it.
I like it.
And actually, I saw the DOGE put this morning, and they verified that it was true on the website that tracks the national debt and the spending and all that stuff. DOGE now has a savings calculator. So as all of the other numbers are ticking, they're able to verify the numbers that already by the cuts they're making, how much money they're saving Americans. And it's going to be really interesting to see those numbers shift. And Burchett actually commented after their first meeting, he did another video, and he talked about how he really wants to make sure the priority is cut the spending and then it stops. So it's not decrease the budget over here so we can spend more in another area. It's cut off the funding, and then that money is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. So I think we're going to see some. He's kind of like a dog with a bone. You put him on it, and I think he's going to get it done.
Wow. I would agree with that completely. I do like the idea because you're right. It's hard for the government. Usually they get extra money, and they're like, "Ooh, what can we do with this? We can spend it somewhere else." And it's like no. We want to cut that completely. So that would be a huge accomplishment. Now you said it's on their website. They're laying out some of this already.
Yeah, on the DOGE website, particularly on their social media, X in particular, and then a lot of changes they're actually posting like on the federal website. So I don't remember the exact web address of whatever the National Debt Tracker website is, but it's on there, and they've got that DOGE calculator on there, which is super fun to watch the numbers go up.
That's amazing. We're gonna have to look that up. I'm speaking with Olivia Lupia. She is with the Tennessee Conservative. Now back here to some Tennessee politics once again. We have the special session coming up. Now, there's a couple different things that they're going to work on during the session. We got school choice, we got hurricane relief, but the main thing seems to be immigration because they want to help immigration in Trump's efforts at deportation and enforcing immigration law. So what do we know about that so far?
Yes. So this is a really interesting mess in the sense that there's so many moving parts with this, and there's a lot of focus on the voucher thing, which is a big problem because there's a legitimate concern, I think, that if this voucher bill does get passed, there may or may not even be any consideration for any additional bills that have a fiscal note because so much money now has to get tied up in this voucher. So Billy kind of threw, we're also going to hit immigration in here, but we don't have any idea of what kind of money will or will not be available with the voucher program. So that's already an interesting component. Then you add on that a lot of this immigration legislation, we'll call it, is, in my view, almost too little too late. So with creating the Centralized Immigration Enforcement Division, which supposedly will be led by an appointee of the governor to work with the Trump administration, okay, we don't 100% know what that looks like. That's fine. We obviously want to support Trump in all of them, but there have been so many things that the state of Tennessee and Bill Lee could have been doing to prevent a lot of what needs to be done here. And some of the legislation that's included for the restrictions, additional stuff that we're going to do, like, hey, we're going to create a Class E felony for local officials who agree to become sanctuary cities. Well, there's already a sanctuary city ban in the state of Tennessee. And it's one of the things that when we've been pressing the legislators about what they're doing about illegal immigration, that's one of the biggest ones they love to come back and say, well, we already did this, and then we strengthened the ban. So how are it's one of two things either happen. You're actually not enforcing the law you created, which is the ban on sanctuary cities, or you didn't actually do what you said, and now you're trying to create punishments for people who are flaunting the law or never obeyed the law in the first place. You've also got legislation included like the stricter standards for state-issued IDs, which would mean a marker on a temporary license issued to a non-citizen. Well, number one, it's inexcusable that a non-citizen could even obtain a state-issued ID. You shouldn't be here. You're not supposed to be here. And secondly, while I don't think that's a bad idea for the situation we're in now, we've got legislation like Representative Gino Bolso's Trump Act that has so many incredible components that would act as a statewide demagnetization versus just the basic identification system. So why are we focusing on these little things instead of these actual proactive changes that could be made? And why are we doing it only after we have a partner in the federal government? I think Randy McNally, Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally, he even said this legislation allows us to put the commitment into action now that we have a willing federal partner in President Trump. So it's almost like we're telling the citizens, well, we wouldn't have really done anything or we couldn't really do anything, but now that Daddy says it's okay, we can. So there's I think some confusion and some ambiguity, and we hope for the best. We're very obviously excited about anything that's going to get these illegals out of here and take the burden off of the system and the taxpayers. But there's a lot of questions about specific pieces of legislation that are going into this, why they've been chosen, and why now. We could have been dealing with this crisis for 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, better late than never, I guess.
Yes.
It's good that Trump is there. It's good that Trump is there to push this, to at least get the state to do it. But you're right. There are things that they could have done previously that they seem to have been reluctant to do. Now, you talked about Gina Bolso's bill. I'm going to hopefully talk to him on the show tomorrow. He's supposed to come on and talk about different things that he is proposing. But you're right, a lot of that's not really coming up in the special session. It might come up in the regular session. But it really, if immigration is going to be the focus, it probably should come up in the special session, don't you think?
Exactly. It's almost like, well, we're going to kind of throw you a little carrot to maybe be able to pat ourselves on the back and say, yeah, we dealt with it, but while not really doing anything. And the legislature, unfortunately, has a really bad track record of doing these kind of halfway, we sort of did, but they have a habit of passing these bills that are good in theory, but have no actual teeth or consequences or real ways to implement them. So they can do, it's really what it is virtue signaling. They can virtue signal and say, hey, aren't we great? We're tackling legal immigration. But here we are, years down the line, and the situation's only gotten worse. Now, of course, a large part is the federal issue. You have to have a willing federal government, and you have to do these things. But there have been states who have been dealing with illegal immigration proactively. We've seen who are, I think, even in worse crisis situations than we are, like Texas, Arizona, even Florida. And the way they've handled it has been so different and had such a big impact. And it's all things that we could have been doing here up to this point. So hopefully we'll have some good stuff come out of this. But I'm watching warily. We'll put it that way.
Olivia Lupia, she is with the Tennessee Conservative, and you can read that every day, TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Subscribe absolutely for free. You'll get their email newsletter and more, TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Olivia, I really appreciate you coming on the show, filling in for Brandon, and I know I'll talk to you again in the future.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.